Hello everyone, this week's Parsha is Parshat Vayelech, but we won't be focusing on that this week. We'll be focusing instead on the special Shabbat this week, that is to say, Shabbat Shuva. Everything I say is going to be based on Rav Bernstein's book, Teshuva. He has a few chapters between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur for what we're supposed to be focusing on this time. He has some beautiful thoughts, so I'll be sharing a couple of chapters. So again, this week's Shabbat is called Shabbat Shuva. It's a special Shabbat. And the reason why it's given that name is just like we saw closer to Tisha B'Av. We had Shabbat Nachamu after the Haftarah, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, and Shabbat Chazon after the special Haftarah of that week's portion. So to here, we have a special Haftarah, and it begins with Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha, right? From the book of Hosea, return Israel to Hashem your God. So Shabbat Shuva from Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha. That's where we get the name. But is there another connection between, and of course we assume that between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur there's a special connection between Shabbat and Shuva? But the answer is, how else do we see this? Because, okay, fine, so we have this Haftarah that seems to be focusing on doing Shuva, but is there anything else? Because otherwise it really seems like everything is kind of hinging on this one Haftarah. So in answer, yes, according to tradition, there is a basic connection between Shabbat and Shuva that actually dates all the way back to the beginning of history. That is to say, there's a midrash that quotes a conversation between Adam, that is to say Adam Harishon, Adam, and his son Cain. And this is after Cain killed Havel. So the midrash is in Hebrew. I'm just going to quote it in English, and it says, so Adam met him, Cain, and asked, what happened with your judgment? He replied, I did tshuva and received clemency. When Adam heard this, he said, such is the power of tshuva, and I was unaware of it. At that time, Adam composed a song for the Shabbos day, also known to us as Miznor Shir L'Yom HaShabbat, right? The Tehillim that we say every Shabbat repeatedly. Now, it seems like the Midrash is informing us that the song for Shabbos was originally composed by Adam upon learning about the power of Tshuva. But when we look at that chapter of Tehillim, it doesn't really seem to be talking about Tshuva at all. So, what are we supposed to learn from this parak of Tehillim? That Adam's response to Tshuva, to learning about the miracle of Tshuva, was to compose a song about Shabbat. What's the connection here? So in answer, we understand that the very idea of Shabbat is a critical part of the Tshuva process itself. Now, how is that? Because we need to see, how does Tshuva begin in general? So Tshuva is all about a person reflecting on a situation, seeing areas where he needs to improve, places where he's not doing so well, and where he needs to make some progress, where he needs to have some improvement. Now, normally, in order to kind of see that, a person needs to kind of sit back and relax and take some time and reflect on what it is he's doing and where he's going and how he's getting there. And in order to do that, you obviously need to take some time. You need to take some time to reflect on this. And in our society, in our world, there really isn't so much time to reflect, because we're always being busy. Even when we're relaxing, we're busy. We have a certain schedule about how we're supposed to be relaxing and a specific itinerary about relaxing. Needless to say, when we're actually busy and on point, we're checking our phones and checking our emails and going on the computer and talking to 3 different people at the same time while answering the phones. We've kind of idealized this idea of busyness. And in such an atmosphere, it's really hard to kind of take a step back and just reflect on where it is, where we're going and where we are at the moment. And therefore Shabbat comes as an antidote to this problem. Because on Shabbat, it's effectively relaxation by statute. You have to relax in a way. You have to take some time and to rest and reflect on where it is you're going and what it is you're doing. And we see that part of Shabbat is really consolidating what it is we do during the week. And actually there's a Gemara that tells us that taking long strides can impair a person's eyesight, but that it can be restored at Kiddush on Friday night. Now the Maharal explains that when we say strides, that represents our journey through life. Because as we're journeying through life, a person might see things that are meant to help bring us to, that are supposed to help us accomplish more idealistic goals, to achieve higher purposes, and see those means as an end in itself, as the goals. And a person can, I guess, get lost in this, but when he does Kiddush on Friday night, that restores his eyesight, and that helps to put things back in perspective so that he can effectively have a proper perspective on life and see what it is he's supposed to be doing. And in that way, we see that Shabbat really helps restore a person's vision and helps bring him back to where it is he's supposed to be going. And so we see that Shabbat is the opportune time for Tshuva. And if we look back at that Tehillim that Adam wrote when he learned about Teshuva, which doesn't talk about Teshuva and doesn't really talk about Shabbat either. Just read the Psukim and you'll see that really it's this kind of broader reflection on life. It's where it says, Tov Lodat Lashem, it's good to thank God. Tzadika Tamar Yifrach, we see this kind of blossoming of the world, the blossoming of a person. And those are the kinds of things you notice when you take some time to yourself and start to reflect on what's happening in the world around you, and that allows you to get to Teshuva. That is one of the ways that Shabbat helps us bring us to Teshuva, and therefore it's called the Shabbat Shuva, right? This special Shabbat that is between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to get us there. But moving on, it is at the end of the day called Shabbat Shuva, after this Haftarah. So what special connection does this Haftarah have with doing Teshuva? What's the connection? So, the Midrash traces the root of this call to return back to Reuven, who is the ancestor of Hosea. Now, at a certain point in the story of the sale of Yosef, we get this pasuk that says, Vayashev Reuven el Habor, right? So Yosef was thrown into a pit, and then we see, and Reuven returned to the pit. Now, that seems pretty simple. Okay, so Reuven returned to the pit, we get it, he left and then he came back. But the reason why that's a problem is because the pasuk doesn't tell us that Reuven ever left. And as a result, because there's this kind of bit of a puzzling pasuk, okay, he returned. From where did he return? We were never told that he left to begin with. So from there the Midrash says, no. When it says Vayashev Reuven, it doesn't mean he physically returned from going somewhere else. Rather, he did Teshuva. Because Vayashev and Teshuva, right, Teshuva on a more basic root means to return to God. So when the pasuk says Vayashev Reuven, it means that Reuven did Teshuva. But he did Teshuva for what? What did he do wrong? So earlier on in the Chumash, we learned in this episode it's just barely alluded to, where we see that Reuven, actually the language of the Chumash is very harsh. It says that, I think Reuven slept with his father's wife, which sounds terrible. That's not literally what he did, but rather the Midrash explains that once Rachel died, Rachel Imenu died, who was Reuven's mother's sister, when she died, Yaakov moved his bed from Rachel's tent to Rachel's maidservant's tent, to Bilhah's tent. And Reuven took offense to this, because Yaakov Avinu was moving his bed into the tent of a maidservant instead of Reuven's mother, who was his wife. So out of offense for his mother, and because he wanted to restore his mother's honor, he went and took Yaakov's bed and brought it back into his mother's tent in order to restore the honor of his mother. Now, that was an incorrect action. That was an affront to his father. He disrespected his father, and that's an avera. But on balance, when we look at this, he's doing tshuva for something that really isn't so bad. Because at the end of the day, he's trying to respect his mother. That's normally a mitzvah, right? Kibud av va'em. That's a good thing. But in this specific context, it was an avera. And in response to this, the Midrash says, said the Holy One, blessed is he, to Reuven, no one ever sinned before me and did tshuva. You are the first one to open with tshuva. By your life, it will be your descendant who stands and opens concerning tshuva first. And who is this? It is Hosea, as it is written, return Israel to Hashem your God, aka Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha. Now, this midrash requires a little bit of clarification, because we have two problems, at least. First, the midrash says that Reuven patach b'tshuva. He was the first one to do tshuva. He opened with tshuva. That's not true. We just saw a midrash that says, actually Cain was the first one to do tshuva. And Adam's response was amazement. He's like, wow, look at tshuva. And then he wrote, like, Mizrah Shir Liyom Shabbat. So you see there are at least two people who did tshuva before Reuven. So how can the midrash say that Reuven patach b'tshuva? How can we say that? That's one. Then second, the midrash also says that Hosea was the one who opened with tshuva. Now, with all due respect, almost every prophet before Hosea also exhorted the Jewish people to do tshuva. So how can the midrash say that actually Hosea was the one who patach b'tshuva? He opened with tshuva. How is that? That's not true, seemingly. Okay, so the Ktav Sofer explains. The Ktav Sofer explains as follows. To understand what the midrash is trying to teach us, we need to ask a simple question. At what stage does a person need to do tshuva? That is to say, if a person's sins exceed his mitzvahs, clearly he for sure needs to do tshuva. Because in the balance, he's in the red, he has more averas than he has mitzvahs, he's doing terribly, and as a result, he clearly needs to do tshuva. Fine. But what if a person has more mitzvahs than averos? He's in the black. He's doing great. He's in the positive, right? He does not have a deficit. He's in the positive. What about that? What if a person has many more mitzvahs than averos? Does he still need to do tshuva? That's the question. In answer, as an allusion, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says as follows, and I'm quoting in Hebrew: "Ha'oseh mitzvah achad kone lo praklit echad, va'over avera achad kone lo sanegor echad." What does that mean? One who performs a mitzvah acquires for himself an advocate, and one who violates an avera acquires for himself a prosecutor. Now, we know that the opposite of a sanegor, a prosecutor, is a kategor, a defender. So why doesn't the Mishnah say a person who does a mitzvah acquires himself a kategor, a defender, and a person who does an avera acquires himself a sanegor, a prosecutor? Why doesn't it say that? But the Mishnah goes out of its way not to say that a person, by doing a mitzvah, acquires himself a defender. Why is that? Because at the end of the day, if it said that you acquire for yourself a defender, that means if you do a mitzvah and you do an avera, okay, so you have a prosecutor, but you have a defender, and therefore they kind of they balance each other out. The message of the Mishnah is that no. If you do mitzvahs, if you do many mitzvahs, then at the end of the day, at your court case, you're going to have someone advocating for you, how amazing you are, you're doing so great, look at all the things you're doing correctly, right? But then you have a prosecutor. The prosecutor is saying, but look at all the things what he did wrong. Look where he messed up. And the advocate doesn't respond to those claims because he's not your defender. He's just an advocate. He's just saying all the good things for you. Really? This is teaching us that at the end of the day, even if you have a single avera, that's a sanegor against you, that's a prosecutor against you. And no matter how many mitzvahs you do, that's not going to wipe out the stain on your soul that is the avera. So instead, the only way to cleanse your soul, to clean that avera off of you, is by doing tshuva. That's the cleansing method. And therefore, that is the full message of tshuva, that even if you have plenty of mitzvahs, if you have a single avera, if you have just a few averas, you still need to deal with them. And that is Reuven's message. Because if we look back, look at the people who did tshuva before him. That is to say, Cain. Let's look at Cain. Cain murdered his brother. What is Cain going to say? Oh, look at my other mitzvahs. Any mitzvah he holds up against murdering somebody is going to pale in comparison. He'll never do well. So as a result, he's for sure in the red. He must do tshuva. He's not in a good position. How about Adam? Adam is kind of the same thing. Adam was given a single mitzvah. Don't eat from the tree. He ate from the tree. Therefore, on balance, he's clearly in the red. He's not doing so great. Therefore, he clearly needs to do tshuva. Fine. How about Reuven? Reuven's actions, at the end of the day, by moving his father's bed into his mother's tent, I mean, it was an avera, there's no question here, right? But at the end of the day, it wasn't so bad, because what he was doing here in another situation could have easily been a mitzvah. Fine. So we see that his avera wasn't so bad. But also, we're dealing with Reuven here. Reuven is one of the 12 Shvatim. He has a lifetime of mitzvahs at his disposal. He has a plethora of mitzvahs. He has plenty of them. And weighed against this is this one fairly minor, seemingly, avera. And even so, Reuven did tshuva. And so we see what Reuven did was he taught us the full obligation and requirement of tshuva. That is how he patach b'tshuva. He opened up with tshuva and taught us just how far the obligation to do tshuva goes. That is the chiddush. And that was what Hosea did as well. Because at the end of the day, Hosea, it's true. There were many other prophets before him who had exhorted the Jewish people to do tshuva. But why? That's because the Jewish people were in spiritual danger. Or because they're in spiritual danger, they were now susceptible to physical danger. And therefore the prophets would say, do tshuva, you need to put yourself in a better situation to secure yourselves. But that's not what Hosea is saying. The pasuk reads, Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha, ki kashalta ba'avonecha. Return Israel to Hashem your God if you have stumbled in your sin, in your one sin. So what Hosea is teaching is, look, regardless of what else might be happening, you have a sin, you need to deal with it, and that is the opening that Hosea has. That is the chiddush that Hosea was teaching us, just like his ancestor Reuven. Amazing. And this actually presents our shift in perspective from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. Again, we're right in the middle. This Shabbat is coming smack in the middle of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And what is it teaching us? Amazingly, that in Rosh Hashanah, we're concerned about the judgment of the individual. You need to see. On balance, are we good? Do you have more positive than negative? In that case, then you're signed and sealed. You're safe. Okay, But Yom Kippur, that's not the message. Yom Kippur is a day of atonement. It's a Yom Kapara. And as a result, since we need to atone for what it is we did wrong, even those few averas, or however many you have, you need to deal with every single one as individuals. Whatever averas you have, you need to deal with on an individual basis. And that is the lesson we learn from Reuven and from his descendant, Hoshea, who teaches us, Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha. You should have a Gmar Chatima Tova and blessings for everyone.